Good afternoon, dear friends. You are on the Military Reporter channel. Today, as before, we are studying the situation on the front in a daily format. Before you start watching, please subscribe to the channel and put a like, so that more people will know the truth. Well, we move on to the situation on the front. So, in recent days there is very good news from the Kursk region. That is what we will talk about today. The pace that the Russian army has gained in the Kursk region is probably the highest in the last 5 months. Probably, there has not been such a pace since October. Consider this. In the last 2 days, 5 villages have come under Russian control. 5 villages have returned home in 2 days. That's the pace. And 2 more villages are on the way. Let's go through everything in order. First of all, I think it is necessary to point out at once why such a pace was possible. And it became possible thanks to the entry of the Russian army into Sumy region. Even the map shows that the visually confirmed entry into Sumy region was not too deep, a little more than 1 kilometer from the border. The Russian positions at the moment are in the area of Novinkoy village. But, as I will tell you, that was more than enough. But I'll explain. The main supply road for the AFU garrison in the entire Kursk region runs here. From Unikovka, and here it is, Unikovka, it was used to supply the main supply of the Kursk grouping of the AFU. Along this highway were carried out munitions transportation, rotation of personnel, reserves transportation, evacuation of the wounded, and so on. For a long time the route was out of reach for Russian troops. Drones were used, but the range was too long. This changed after the Russian army broke through from the north to the south and took the village of Sverdlikovo. Now the Russian positions moved closer to the highway, but still the distance was not insignificant, about 8 kilometers. That is the range limit for many air defense systems, range from 8 to 10 kilometers. To reduce this distance and improve fire control over the highway, an approach to the Sumy region was organized. You may ask, can a small advance in depth make a significant difference? Asterisk. I answer. Let's look at the map. From Sverdlikovo, even from extreme Russian positions to the highway was 7 km. And now let's see what is the distance from the current positions of Russian troops in Sumy region, i.e. near Novinkoy village. That's it. And what do we see? About 5 kilometers is the ideal range for destroying everything that moves along the highway. And that's why the Ukrainian armed forces had a total collapse of defense in the north of Kursk region. Let me repeat, it is in the north of Kursk region that the Ukrainian armed forces have lost 5 villages over the last 2 days. Now I will tell you about everything in detail. As I have already said, the front in the north of Kursk region of the Ukrainian armed forces began to collapse rapidly. Now they can't hold their positions, and as a result the defense line along the road has collapsed. See, this line has been stormed by Russian troops since the fall. There were constant attacks, but no great success was achieved. And there was no success precisely because the supply route remained under Ukrainian armed forces control ***. There was a constant feeding with reserves. 1 battalion was destroyed, exactly the same battalion came to Sumy region and got into position. That is why here in the last months there was mainly a positional struggle. The front, if it moved only a couple of 100 meters a week, no more. There were constant swings, such as in the vicinity of the village of Kruglinskaya, which changed hands 3 times. Until recently, everything changed, as I have already said, with the entry of Russian troops into the Sumy region and taking the highway under tight fire control. No more bringing in reserves and ammunition. In the course of the most powerful counterattack, the positions of the AFU were simply crushed. The long-suffering Pogrebki was taken under full Russian control, and just a few hours later the AFU was knocked out of neighboring Orlovka. Orlovka is a small village, with only 1 street lined with houses, so after the loss of Pogrebki the AFU could not stay in Orlovka and rolled back to Novaya Sorokina. However, even there they failed to organize a defense. The battle for the village lasted only 24 hours. After which it was taken by Russian troops, and the Ukrainian units continued their retreat towards Staraya Sorokina. In addition to Pogrebki, Orlovka and Novaya Sorokina, the village of Maryivka was also taken. Now the AFU has no defense node here, and this bulge will be cut off in the very near future. Approximately 7 kilometers of Kursk land will return home. Now the AFU is trying to organize a defense node in the agglomeration including Staraya Sorokina, Malaya Lakhnya, Viktorovka and Nikolaevka. These villages literally merge with each other, so it's going to be a real battle here. Even in the absence of reserves, the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to hold the defense for some time, but not for too long. Already now Russian troops are having successes in this direction as well. I have already said that 5 villages have been returned over the past 2 days. I have named 4, and the 5th is the village of Nikolskoye. It is a long-suffering village. Storms have been carried out here since January, and I showed these attacks on my channel. At that time, they ended unsuccessfully for the Russian units. They were unable to gain a foothold in the village. However, after the AFU was faced with zeroed logistics, another attack brought the Russian army long-awaited success. In the course of 2 battles, Ukrainian units were knocked out of the village. Now the Russian army's main task is to cut off this entire bulge. This is the nearest goal, and given the fire control over the supply route, it is likely to be accomplished as soon as possible. Residents of the Kursk region can expect to return home soon for the first time in a long time. 5 villages have been taken in 2 days, and 2 more are on the way. One of them is Lebedyovka. Some Telegram channels have already said that it has been completely taken by the Russian army. However, let's be objective, there are still Ukrainian units on the outskirts. Therefore, we will not rush things, but probably today or tomorrow Lebedyovka will come under the full control of the Russian troops. Another village that is on its way is Kurilovka. It is reportedly likely to be taken as early as today. It is also reported that Melivoy is also coming under the control of Russian troops. As you can see, Russia will inevitably close the Kursk pocket and completely withdraw the AFU from Russian lands. As we can see, the current situation in the north of the Kursk region is developing rapidly. The Russian army is completely dominating this sector, depriving the AFU of the ability to hold its defenses. The most important thing now is further steps in this direction. Apparently, the Russian command plans to build on its success and continue pressure on the enemy positions in order to finally clear the northern part of the Kursk region and deprive the AFU of even a hypothetical opportunity to counterattack. What are the key directions now? Now the main group of the AFU, which retreated after losing 5 villages, is trying to gain a foothold in the defense node including Staraya Sorokina, Malaya Lakhnya, Viktorovka and Nikolaevka. This is a logical decision on their part, as these settlements are close to each other and form a natural defensive barrier. However, the Russian army is already tightly working on these positions. If the Russian forces manage to cut the bulge, hold Lebedyovka and Kurilovka***, block the possible escape routes of the AFU, it will actually lead to collapse of the entire northern grouping of the AFU in the area. The reason is simple. In conditions of full fire control by Russian troops, Ukrainian units will simply be unable to receive reinforcements or break out of the encirclement. This is not a question of if, but a question of time. Another important point is how far will the Russian army advance in Sumy region? At the moment, a 1-kilometer advance has already given a serious strategic advantage, allowing them to take key AFU supply roads under fire control. But if the Russian army advances further, even an additional 3 to 5 kilometers, it could lead to even more serious consequences for the Ukrainian troops. First, the AFU will lose control over alternative supply routes that they can still use. Second, this would pose a real threat to the logistics hub at Yanukovka. Third, Ukrainian forces will have to transfer reserves from other directions, which will weaken their position on other parts of the front. Conclusion * control over the north of Kursk Oblast directly depends on the development of events in Sumy Oblast. If the RF armed forces gain a founded foothold there, it will be a strategic turning point in this direction. As already mentioned, Lebedyovka and Kurilovka will soon come under the full control of Russian troops. But what's next? According to available information, fighting for Melivoy *** has already begun, and its capture is a matter of next 24 hours. Further goals are quite obvious. Complete liberation of the Kursk region. Creation of a buffer zone on the territory of Sumy region, which will not allow the AFU to use it for strikes on the Russian border areas. We see that events on this section of the front are developing very quickly. In just 2 days, 5 villages have fallen under the control of Russian troops, and 2 more are on their way. The Ukrainian armed forces are in a critical position, without supplies, without reserves, and without the ability to hold their defenses in the same format. The next few days will be crucial. If the Kursk pocket is indeed completely closed, it will be one of the most serious tactical successes of the Russian army in recent months. Stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel to keep abreast of the real situation on the front.